Absolutely, we need to think about all the materials we use in all aspects of our lives, and obviously construction is an important part of that. And while we have to be careful about where the wood is grown and how it's grown and that we replace it and so on, it's obvious that building from brick, which is a very energy intensive material, is going to have more of an energy impact than building with wood. So I definitely see the use of wood in construction as an important part of a sustainable future. Well, what we're trying to achieve from an economic point of view is a circular economy. So you use something at one end and it then becomes a waste product and just goes back into the environment, rather than drawing something out of the environment, using a huge amount of energy into turning it into something useful and then creating a waste product. So wood is definitely part of a circular economy approach to construction, because the trees grow naturally, they absorb carbon while they're growing, and then they hold that carbon and store it while they're in the building, and then when the building's finished, that carbon can go back into the soil. So really that's how things were for most of our history, and the creation of buildings through brick and through steel and glass is a much more energy intensive way of building. So I think there's a really important role for timber in construction in a sustainable society. Well, I can understand why people might be concerned about wood being a combustible material, because we're just not used to living in wooden buildings in this country. But obviously plenty of other societies mainly have wooden buildings. You can think about Scandinavian countries and also the US, and there isn't an insurance problem there. And actually the biggest threat to insurance values is coming from climate change and the really serious and extreme weather events that we're having now, which are much more likely to create problems for the insurance industry than the very unusual event of a wooden building catching fire. Well, I actually think 2050 is far too late, and we need to be removing fossil fuels from our economy as quickly as possible. And that has huge implications for every aspect of our lives, including construction. So we can't afford to be using building materials that are energy intensive in their production, and we can't afford to be creating buildings that actually need fossil fuels to keep them warm. So not only does that mean getting rid of gas boilers, it also means having very well insulated buildings. And then we also need to be withdrawing carbon dioxide back from the atmosphere. So a product like wood that actually absorbs carbon dioxide while it's growing, rather than a product like cement that actually produces carbon dioxide, is a really important part of getting to net zero, because we can start to reabsorb the carbon dioxide we've already produced. And without that, we're not going to get to net zero by 2050, never mind 2030, which I think is actually necessary. I mean, I've been working on this for 20 years, and it amazes me that there really hasn't been much progress in that time. And really what we need is a culture shift, and I think the good news is all industries are now focused on this. But the problem is there's a lot of builders out there who trained 20 or 30 years ago, and they just aren't aware of of the carbon implications of the way they're building houses. So no, we really need to firstly start changing the way we train builders today and changing the way the whole industry operates, but we also need to be retraining the builders who were trained 10 or 20 years ago, where energy minimisation was not a key part of their training, because everybody needs to be focused on that now. I think it's about training architects, but also training the architectural consultants who are actually, and the architectural technicians who are the people that actually make the buildings work. So, I mean, obviously the design and choosing which material you build with is important, but also the detail of how you construct the building, how you minimise energy loss, how you make sure you don't have any of those cold energy bridges, that's all absolutely crucial. And in a way, this COVID hiatus has given us an opportunity to retrain everybody and to change the way we're building and so on, and to really invest in a Green New Deal where we're constructing with low energy materials, with materials like wood that can bring carbon back in from the environment, and making sure that everybody's trained for the buildings of the future, because the buildings that we're building now are going to be with us for 100 years, so it's really vital that we get them right.